making the time for us this morning. Johnny Mac, some good thoughts from both our guests today who've been down there at camp with you.
Yeah, they both been down there for every practice. So between the three of us, you got 30 practices if you want to have 10, 10, 10. So we've all seen it. You can't see, it's good to get other perspectives because you can't see everything going on in practice. I explained on last night's show. I spent a lot of time watching one-on-ones with the running backs and linebackers in pass protection, one-on-ones with the offensive line versus defensive line. And if you do that, you can't watch one-on-ones with the receivers and DBs. So it's good to get other perspectives as well. And yeah, a lot of good in this camp. I think it's gone pretty smoothly overall. I think Howie's mentality of getting Jalen Carter done, trying to remove any distractions worked. It's been almost entirely football focused, which is a good thing when you're trying to integrate a young coordinator who's doing it for the first time. As you approach preseason game number 1, I think it's been pretty good overall.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Johnny Mac, good stuff. We've got a couple 10 minutes left to go in the show, or 8 minutes left to go in the show today. What did it make, John, of the upcoming preseason game for the Philadelphia Eagles, if anything?
Well, I don't worry about results, obviously. I think, when you talk about preseason games, it's generally, the guy who is the better third string quarterback is probably going to win, because things get tough when offensive line's a big part of it too. As the deeper you get in the offensive line, you get some shoddy blocking. And I always say, you can't play offense if you can't block people. So that's why preseason games tend to get really ugly when the reserves are in there. But so I wouldn't worry too much about results. But when you do see certain players, as I said, more likely on defense, you're going to see a lot of guys sit, but like Marcus Epps, Michael Carter, they're going to have to play most likely. You might see Jahad Campbell out there as a young player, maybe not. You'll certainly see Ebiketie and guys like that, Epinesa, Byron Young, and Moro Jomo might have to play a little bit. So you'll see some players, and that I would focus on those reps more than anything else.
How about Sean Mannion, John? Just from a sense of,
well, I think with Sean Mannion,
he's never called plays. He's never been in this moment. Is there something to watch for there with Sean?
Clean operation, man.
Right.
No false starts, because they are going to be running the motions and the different cadences and doing things in a different fashion, that different packaging, as I call it. So the last thing you want to see is a bunch of false starts and a bunch of and they had trouble with that early in camp, understandably so. And it's cleaned up a little bit. They had a little bit of a hiccup 2-3 practices ago and then responded again. So with the dress rehearsal, you don't want it to be bad. You don't want a bunch of pre-snap stuff. So I think that's number one. Nobody's game planning, so I wouldn't get too worked up about the play calling. You're just trying to evaluate players. That'll come into it when you actually game plan for an opponent. But you're not going to know about that from a preseason game because nobody's game planning for these games, either side.
And how much of it do you think they'll try and play competitive advantage in terms of keeping things close to the vest?
Oh, very. Nick's insane with that stuff. Yeah, they're not showing anything.
So we won't really get at all an idea of the offense in preseason.
No, they're just going to run plays like they do in practice and try to evaluate players in a live environment, which is important. especially in the running game. So you'll see a lot of Tank Bigsby, a lot of Will Shipley. Damian Pierce has been banged up. Unless he gets back tomorrow, he probably isn't going to play. But so you might see, again, you talk about the ugliness, you might see a ton of Jaquindon Jackson in the second half who just got here as a running back. But the early reps with Tank and Will Shipley are going to be important. And again, these tackling, live environment, like it looked pretty good yesterday. But in a run-heavy practice, the running game looked pretty good. But you don't really know because they're not tackling. And this is the first time you get a live environment, and that part of it is very, very important.
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously, can't tell much. Football is a physical game, so when they don't tackle in practice, you always have to put a big caveat, John, and what you see and what you watch out there, which I think you do a good job at doing. All right, J-Mac, tomorrow they're back out on the practice field. It was good to be back in the morning show here on Birds 365 as we are 10 practices deep. Overall, feels like a positive training camp so far, Johnny Mac. I don't want to go too far. I don't think you can make too much of it, but feels to me like a positive training camp. I don't know if you would agree or disagree, but that's just the feeling I'm getting at this point.
Yeah, I think it's been mostly positive. I think the two things you want, it's been football focused, no real distractions for the most part. And number two, no significant injuries. Like I know people want Mekhi Lemon on the field. They want Jonathan Grenard on the field, but they're not seizing into it. You see across the NFL, you hear about Achilles and ACLs and losing players for significant periods of time. It's been pretty good from that standpoint. So those are the two things that you want most of all. Everybody, that's the big buzzword, alignment, yada, yada, everybody being on the same page. And then always health, always attrition. Get through these things as healthy as possible. And hamstrings can be frustrating, but it could be a hell of a lot worse.
No doubt. Agree with that. All right, Johnny Mac, good stuff. Should be interesting to see kind of how it all shakes out this weekend. Practice back tomorrow, walk through today and Friday, and then games out in Baltimore, right? Yeah, so you got, what kind of drive is that for you?
Well, it should be a pretty nice drive. It should be an hour and a half, but it will be 3 hours minimum because of the Delaware Memorial Bridge in I-95.
Brutal. Johnny Mac, your final thoughts here on a Wednesday edition of Birds 365.
You got me thinking about that bridge, man. Now I've lost my train of thought, man. I hate it so much. I hate it so much. Somebody's got to fix that. But I digress. Tomorrow will be Nick Sirianni talking about the game. So you'll get all the, hey, who you playing? And I can answer that. Nick will say, well, we're going to meet later today. So he will not give it up. And as BLG astutely pointed out, they went to Baltimore a couple of years ago, and they were warming up to play the starters, and it rained, and they didn't like the field, and they didn't play anybody. So who knows? You know, it is a new offense. It is a different packaging, different branding, different coach. Maybe you could argue they need some time on the field together, but I think they're going to lean on the side of caution, but we'll see.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Johnny Mac, great show this morning, my friend. I will catch up with you tomorrow in the morning and then a night show tomorrow night, and then back here for a morning show on Football Friday. So we'll do all that and keep everybody posted. J-Mac, thanks for doing it today, brother. We'll catch up with you tomorrow.
All right, thanks, everybody.